Up next in the broadcast, North Korea honors the third anniversary of the passing of former leader Kim Jong-il as observers say his son, Kim Jong-un, will begin showing policies that bear his own colors. Investors continue to exit the Russian market as Moscow steps in with desperate measures to hike up the falling ruble. At least 145 people, most of them young children, are dead from a school massacre in Pakistan. All 7 attackers from the Taliban were killed, but the grieving has just begun. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to the program, everyone. You're watching Primetime News, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Tae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin across the border where North Korea commemorated the third anniversary of its former leader Kim Jong-il on this Wednesday.
Pyongyang's official Korean Central News Agency reported today that the communist state mourned the death of its late leader with horns ringing out around the regime at noon. Kim's son, current North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, together with his wife Lee Seol-ju, hosted a commemoration ceremony at the Kumsusan Memorial Palace. Some of North Korea's top officials were present at the ceremony, a peek into North Korea's leadership, and this included Kim Yong-nam, North Korea's ceremonial head of state, and North Korean Special Envoy Choi Ryong-hae. Kim Jong-un's aunt, Kim Kyung-hee, was not seen, though. CNN reported earlier this month that she died of a stroke during an argument with her nephew over the execution of her husband, Chang Song-taek, last year. If you remember, back in 2011, there were doubts about whether Kim Jong-un would be able to fill his father's boots. Fast forward 3 years, and now experts are crediting him with building up an inner circle of aides and officials that he can trust. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
He's bold and charismatic with the military, warm and friendly with children, and not afraid to reveal his weaknesses. At the same time, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un rules with an iron fist. 3 years into power, the young Kim is believed to be in the final stages of forming his own power base, ruthlessly removing anyone perceived to be disloyal. The 31-year-old launched a reign of terror last year when he executed his uncle Chang Song-taek. Since then, Chang's wife Kim Kyung-hee has vanished from the public eye, apparently replaced by Kim's younger sister Jong, who has been given a vice ministerial position in the party. And Kim Jong-un makes sure that no one gains too much power. Choi Ryong-hae, who is generally regarded as the second most powerful figure within the regime, has frequently moved up and down the power ladder.
So he's been using his powers of appointment, dismissal, promotion, and putting people into place, into offices, and in exchange they provide political loyalty.
While Kim Jong-il bestowed immense power to the military during a famine in the 1990s, the young Kim has shifted command back to the party.
During the Kim Jong-un era, operations within the party have been normalized. The military has been placed under the party, no longer a special class, enjoying special favors.
Going forward, Kim Jong-un is expected to step out of his father's shadows and rule North Korea his way.
Kim Jong-un-style politics, economy, social culture, diplomacy, and defense. It's highly likely that Kim Jong-un introduces policies led by him that bear his own colors.
This while bearing a striking resemblance to his grandfather and North Korean founder Kim Il-sung, which experts say is part of attempts to justify the third-generation power succession. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
The Hollywood movie with a plot to assassinate Kim Jong-un is set to be released on Christmas Day in the U.S., but those that recently hacked into Sony Pictures that made this movie are warning moviegoers against watching this film. Shin Se-min has more.
Remember the 11th of September 2001. That's the warning from hackers who want to stop the Sony Pictures movie The Interview from being released in U.S. theaters. The comedy is set to hit screens around the country on Christmas Day. In a message posted Tuesday, the group, which calls itself Guardians of Peace, threatened a movie maker, saying, "We will clearly show it to you at the very time and places the interview will be shown, including the premiere, how bitter fate those who seek fun and terror should be doomed to." Fingers are expected to be pointed at Pyongyang for this latest threat. There have been unfounded rumors North Korea was behind last month's cyber attack on Sony Pictures because of the nature of the movie's plot. The movie stars Seth Rogen and James Franco as celebrity journalists who score an interview with Kim Jong-un, only to have the CIA order them to use the opportunity to pull off an assassination. The two actors have called off media appearances, and the New York premiere has been canceled in response to the threats. U.S. government officials have been quoted as saying that they are aware of the message, but they're downplaying the warning, saying it's highly unlikely the hackers would try and make good on their threat. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The troubled Russian economy has investors running from Moscow in search of safer markets, and its currency crisis is also unleashing a negative ripple effect on other emerging markets. Our Kim Jong-il has the details.
The falling ruble and collapse of Moscow's bond and stock markets are rattling investors as they unload bonds in search of safer havens.
In such an unstable and volatile atmosphere, many fundamental factors are not working anymore and panic prevails, which is not good. At this moment, the mood in the market is not very positive.
The crisis is having a ripple effect on other emerging markets, sparking a sell-off in countries like Mexico, Brazil, and India, which have been relying on foreign capital inflows to fund their growth. But this sudden exodus of money could jeopardize their fragile economies. Experts also worry of further negative effects, especially if large state-run energy companies get cut off from the bond market and are left with no other financing options. This could lead to slowing investments and growth, resulting in corporate defaults down the line. Market analysts say with falling oil prices and Russia edging towards a return to its financial meltdown of 1998, the country's exclusion from the MSCI Emerging Markets Index is strongly being considered. Kim Jong-il, Arirang News.
And reflecting the effect of plunging global oil prices, Korea's producer prices slipped again for the fourth straight month in November. The Bank of Korea says the producer price index, which is an indicator of future consumer inflation, dropped nearly 1% in November from a year earlier. That's the lowest level since December 2010. With Dubai crude plunging by more than 11% last month, the price of petroleum products also went down in November, falling nearly 20% compared to November last year. But prices of agricultural goods jumped more than 2% in the same period.
President Park Geun-hye says she plans to transform Korea's production-centered industrial complexes into hubs for creative industries where innovative ideas are commercialized. At the opening of Korea's fourth Economic Innovation Center in the southeastern city of Gumi, the president noted that complexes in this region had helped to vitalize local economies over the past 40 years, but added that it's time to increase production by way of the Internet of Things and big data. President Park's innovation centers are part of a creative economy vision where startups, local governments, and research institutes are matched up to receive various support from conglomerates. Two-way trade between South Korea and Vietnam is on course to smash an all-time annual high in terms of volume this year, and it's expected to rise even further as their free trade agreement is set to come into effect in the months to come. Our Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
Korea and Vietnam are hitting it off on the trade front. Trade volume between the two countries is forecast to surpass $30 billion for the first time this year. The accumulated volume between the two already recorded $25 billion during the January to October period, 40 times more than what was recorded when they first opened trade ties some 40 years ago. And it seems the volume is expected to shoot up even further, as a bilateral free trade agreement was concluded earlier this month. With the FTA deal, Korean exports to Vietnam are expected to increase by up to 28%, while Vietnamese exports to Korea are projected to increase by 20%. In turn, it's expected to boost Korea's GDP by up to 0.7% and increase Vietnam's by more than 3%. Vietnam is currently Korea's 8th largest trading partner, while Korea is Vietnam's 6th largest. Korea's exports to Vietnam are mainly in the form of intermediate goods, such as steel, petrochemical products, and electronic components. A large portion of their imports of Korean goods are made by some 3,000 Korean companies currently located in Vietnam. For example, Korean exports of telecommunications parts rose sharply by 24% this year from the previous year, following a $5 billion investment by Korea's Samsung Electronics after it built a plant in the Southeast Asian nation. Korea imports textiles and agriculture and fisheries products from Vietnam and is expected to open up its market for nearly 500 additional Vietnamese products. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
The former vice president of Korean Air, Jo Hyun-ah, went in for questioning by prosecutors over her recent nut rage incident. As she entered the building, she stood in front of reporters with her head bowed and said she was sorry. Kim Min-ji reports on which charges she faces and how she's expected to defend herself.
The probe into the nut rage controversy continues. Jo Hyun-ah, the former vice president of Korean Air, appeared before prosecutors in Seoul on Wednesday afternoon. She walked through the media waiting outside with her head down and said she was sorry but didn't respond to any questions. Attention is being drawn to whether an arrest warrant will be issued for Jo, who allegedly made a Seoul-bound Korean Air flight turn back to the gate to deboard the head of cabin crew, all because she was upset that her nuts were not served according to the manual for first-class passengers. Prosecutors will look into whether Jo's actions broke aviation laws. Jo has admitted to telling the head of cabin crew to deboard, but says she never ordered the plane to turn around. Jo will also be questioned on whether she engaged in evidence tampering. Crew members and a passenger who witnessed the incident say Korean Air officials had pressured them to give false testimonies. Prosecutors are also looking into whether abusive language and violence was used. But Jo denies allegations of any type of physical abuse. This comes after Korea's Transportation Ministry on Tuesday filed a complaint with the prosecution against the former executive. Korean Air could also be hit with a fine of up to $1.3 million or even a 3-week-long suspension of operations between New York and Seoul. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In this next story, we talk about a hit at the local box office here in Korea. It's called My Love, Don't Cross That River. And it's about a couple that's been together for 3/4 of a century. And what's interesting is that the makeup of the audience is quite young. Our Kwon So-ah tells us more.
할머니도 그래.
그러면 더 나았어?
더 나았죠.
그럼 난또 당신 양주가 그래. 아이고 그냥 전화네. 아이고 줬어야 이쁘네요.
Not many words were needed for this documentary to warm the hearts of more than 1 million moviegoers in Korea. My Love, Don't Cross That River tells the true 76-year love story of an elderly couple. 89-year-old Kang Ge-yeol and 98-year-old Jo Byung-man have been together since 1938. Director Jin Mo-young decided to zoom in on the couple's simple life in a mountainous village in Gangwon-do province after watching an earlier TV documentary about them called Gray-Haired Lovers. The film was released in 186 theaters late last month, but due to its popularity, it's now being shown on more than 800. Last weekend, the documentary beat out Hollywood blockbuster Interstellar. What's interesting is that the number of young people checking out the film is higher than expected. More than half of the viewers have been in their 20s.
I felt a lot while watching The Grandmother.
I learned what real love is about.
I really enjoyed it. I want everyone to watch it.
The movie has brought tears to viewers and film critics alike, who say the lifelong love story shows that real love does not wither with age. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
In what has become somewhat of an annual tradition, Google released its top 10 most searched items of 2014. From celebrities to tragic events, the list provides a snapshot of this year's zeitgeist. Connie Lee has the details on the things that got people thinking and talking.
It's that time of year again when Google releases its roundup of the most searched terms over the past 12 months.
The world knows how.
So what made the cut for 2014? Coming in at number 1, Robin Williams. The actor's sudden death this past August shocked the world and made his name the most searched this year. Coming in at number 2 was this year's World Cup in Brazil, followed by the Ebola outbreak, which has killed nearly 7,000 people to date. Another tragedy comes in at number 4, the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. And rounding out the top 5 was the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. The movement to help raise awareness of ALS went viral this past summer, with dozens of Korean celebrities also taking part. The popular mobile game Flappy Bird is next on the list, followed by Conchita Wurst, the Austrian winner of this year's Eurovision Song Contest, who performs in drag. The Islamic State militant group that has brought terror to the world finished in 8th place. On a brighter note, Disney's hit movie Frozen comes in at 9th, and rounding out the top 10 was the Sochi Olympics. So there you have it. This list is derived from the more than 100 billion searches per month on Google, which controls 2/3 of the internet search engine market. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
It's an extraordinary thing.
Pakistan is reeling from a heinous attack on a school that's left at least 145 people dead, most of them young children.
With more on this story and others, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, the Taliban has claimed responsibility for this massacre, which has been condemned by the international community. It's such a tragic situation. How are the families coping?
Well, funerals for students and teachers, as well as 3 days of national mourning, are being observed after Tuesday's siege on the school in Peshawar. The government has vowed retribution against the militants responsible as public pressure mounts against Pakistan's leadership to do more in tackling this deadly insurgency. Our Connie Kim reports.
What began as regular school day for students in the city of Peshawar ended in tragedy. 7 gunmen intent on killing cut through the wire fence of a military-run school and started in the auditorium where an event was being held and opened fire. The assailants then went door to door, shooting students and teachers in their classrooms. At the end of their 8-hour assault, at least 145 people, mostly students, were dead. The siege ended in a shootout, with the Pakistani military killing all 7 attackers. The Taliban quickly claimed responsibility, saying it was revenge for a Pakistani military offensive that has been targeting the Taliban's base of power since June. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said his government would not back down.
Our prayers go to the families whose children were killed in this tragedy. I think this war and struggle will continue until the terrorism is completely rooted out of this country.
World leaders were quick to condemn the violence.
No cause can justify such a brutality. No grievance can excuse such horror. It is an act of horror and rank cowardice to attack defenseless children while they learn.
U.S. President Barack Obama said that terrorists had once again showed their depravity. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, Pakistan's longtime rival, said the school attack was a crime against humanity and called for vigilant action. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And turning now to Australia, thousands of people have come out to pay tribute to the 2 hostages who died after a 16-hour-long siege at a cafe in Sydney earlier this week. At a memorial service on Wednesday, Archbishop Anthony Fisher said 34-year-old cafe manager Tori Johnson had tried to wrestle the weapon from the gunman, which had triggered the police raid. This as 38-year-old lawyer and mother of 3 Katrina Dawson was shielding a pregnant friend from the gunshots. Later, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott acknowledged that a new tough national security law that was passed in October had failed to prevent the hostage crisis. And shifting now to West Africa, Britain, one of the countries leading the fight against Ebola, says it expects the first major breakthrough in defeating the outbreak within 4 to 6 weeks. The optimistic outlook comes as London announced on Tuesday that it will not be seeking the help of U.S. military personnel in Sierra Leone. This as the spread of the deadly virus has shown signs of slowing.
Transmission rates are already falling. But we should be absolutely clear that there is a long way to go in this battle against Ebola. As we are getting out there into the districts, you're seeing the numbers rise because we're getting a truer picture of just how bad this disease is.
The British military plans to boost its force of 800 soldiers concentrating in the capital, Freetown. However, the government there has criticized the response as being too slow. And finally, Apple has won a major antitrust lawsuit in the U.S. worth up to $1 billion over its iPod business and alleged unfair market practices. A federal jury in California on Tuesday cleared Apple of charges that had abused its dominant position in the music market. The class action suit, which covered some 8 million iPod users, accused the U.S. tech giant of using software to block competing online services. In their defense, Apple executives argue that its iTunes software only intended to provide security from hackers. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with a look at sports. Kicking things off with South Korea football, the national team is currently training down on Jeju Island with the coaching staff keeping tabs on who will be included on the Asian Cup roster. Manager Uli Stilica, along with the Korea Football Association, will finalize the 23-man squad by the end of training camp and announce their picks on Monday. And on January 4th next year, South Korea and Saudi Arabia, both taking part in the Asian Cup, will meet in Sydney, Australia for a tune-up match just 5 days before the continental tournament kicks off there. That'll give the Taeguk Warriors a chance to assess their performance before the team's first match against Oman on the 10th. Now to the live games of the night. First to the KBL. It was a double-header, and we start with the top two teams in the capital, Seoul. And the SK Knights at home lead over the Mobis Phoebus by the half. And we fast forward all the way to the fourth quarter, and 3 points apart. Aaron Haynes is fouled and won at the buzzer, but he misses the free throw as Mobis sneaks by 89-88. Meanwhile, in Wonju, the Dongbu Promis Kim Ju-sung turns back the hands of time with a classic performance as they win at home over KGC by 5. And off to pro volleyball in the V-League, the ladies sparked off the action in Incheon. Now it was the Hunguk Life Pink Spiders, and they start off 2-0. But the number 1 IBK Altos tie it up, taking it to the last set, reminiscent of their last meeting. And like last time, IBK is again the victor to hold on to first place. Meanwhile, the visiting Hyundai Capital Skywalkers and the Korean Air Jumbos battle it out also in Incheon, and Kevin LaRue and Moon Sung-min lead the Skywalkers to the win 3-1. Finally, Spanish giants Real Madrid are through to the FIFA Club World Cup final after plowing through Cruz Azul 4-0 in the semis. It was the first time in a while Cristiano Ronaldo didn't find net, with Sergio Ramos and Karim Benzema opening the scoring against the North American champions. But he did create or help create both Gareth Bale and Isco's strikes in the second half. Now winners of 21 straight, Real will face either San Lorenzo or Auckland City, will face each other Wednesday evening in Marrakesh, Morocco. And that wraps it up for sports. Stay tuned for the weather up next. Have a good night.
Hope you are staying warm in the cold. Welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the latest weather forecast. It was an icy and frigid day nationwide with cold wave advisories issued in most regions, and strong winds are making conditions feel a lot colder than the actual numbers. So far, 28 centimeters of snow has been recorded in Jeollanam-do province, and it looks like more is in store through later tonight. Those on the west coast are looking at about 1 to 5 centimeters, while up to 10 centimeters is expected down in Jeju. Brace yourselves for more freezing conditions tomorrow as morning lows will dip to minus 13 degrees here in Seoul. Looking ahead, it looks like snow and showers may fall once again on Friday as well as Saturday. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul will only makes it to minus 2 in the afternoon. Daegu hits 0, Gwangju reaches 2. On to other places. Jeju makes it to 5, Dokdo hits 2, Mount Kumgang minus 6. That'll do it for now. I'll be back with more after midnight. See you then.
And that's primetime news for this Wednesday. I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Have a great evening. We'll see you again soon.